Hello. Hey, Sar. Thanks for having
Hi.
me. Um, and I'm assuming that at least some of you attended the workshop, which was done by my co-founder, Avier, yesterday. It was quite extensive, in which he basically gave an overview of what we're trying to do at Webiverse. But at the very core, what we're trying to, like the core realization was that, okay, it's whatever is the next version of computing. If it's a more spatial presence, we need to just take the 2D web into a 3D web, right? And a lot of people don't think of the web as 3D because it has just gone to native applications as well as app stores, right? Like all the 3D applications, we just associate more with that. But Avier's, life has been around the web. He was the founding engineer at Webflow, then basically went to ship the first VR browser out of Magic Leap. And then he made his own VR browser as well, Exokit. Um, and at the core, what we're trying to do is we believe that whatever is the next, version of computing, the more spatial, immersive one, it needs to fulfill these or five things which we believe. The first one is freedom of expression, which means that anyone should be able to build their own stuff, which could include avatars, which could include environments. Is the same concept as the web page, right? Like people will be able to build their websites and host it. So it's the same concept, but now it's a bit complicated. So we felt that it is extremely important for us to at least create a system so that even non-developers are able to do that, right? They are able to like build their own next versions of a more spatial web. The second one we believe is that it's important to have like neutral and opinion agnostic infrastructure, which is what web fulfills anyways. Once you are in app stores and platforms, then you have to live by the rules of those app stores and platforms, which could be quite opinionated sometimes. Whereas, whenever anything is on the web, it's completely democratized, right? And web to this day is the most democratic medium. The third one is very important, and I think anyone who does development on the web, for them, it's very intuitive, is to leverage open standards for interoperability. We do it in 2D all the time. For example, we use JPEG, PNGs. The same thing needs to be just transported into the world of 3D, right? So in 3D we started this long time ago, but already we are seeing some adoption in terms of standards. For example, for 3D, the file format which is coming out to be is like GLB, GLTF. Another file format which we are pushing, and I think there's a big significant Japanese community which is also pushing, is VRM. That's for avatar. So it's like a rigged version. It's an extension of GLTF only, but it's like a rigged version with already humanoid movements defined, as well as emotes and etc. also defined. Similarly, we are using like some other extensions as well, but they're all based on like standard file formats, and all is open source. One important thing which is, I think, a bit different, is what we believe is the right of exit, and that anyways you are able to achieve if you build anything on standard file formats, because then you can just port something which you build on one game engine to the other, and it's super easy to do it, right? And that's also come very intuitively to anybody who does web-based development, but it might not be very intuitive to people who are building it on closed party engines and like closed platforms, right? Like for example, if you build an experience within Roblox, you can't just like port it out to some other engine, right? Like it doesn't work that way. And the last one is, strong guarantees of privacy. And that's a bit of a more broader arching theme, but basically what we're trying to do is, like, for example, today, like we talk about search engines, we talk about social media. We don't really know like what are the algorithms on which these work. And I think when we have more spatial presence, like privacy is going to become much more important. So even if it's not like commercial license or MIT license based product, open source, at least there should be a view source component attached to it, so that like it's not a question of that you don't want to be evil, you just can't be evil, right? Because like the public audit and the eyes will always be on you. So these are the things on which we started building Webiverse. And to be very honest, when I started with Webiverse, I also did not believe that we'd be able to achieve something like this on the web. But like anybody can go and check out our live demo. we are getting like a full high fidelity 3D experience on the web with full body humanoid, with hair physics, and it's super easy to build stuff within, right? Like you can literally just like drag and drop your 3D assets in, it automatically generates a collision mesh, and you can create an environment within like 5 minutes. And the fact that it's open source, you can just like go and like mod the code, and you can add your shaders, etc., to it as well. Some of the experiences which we have made, if I can like share it on some link, I'd be like happy to share it. But like we share a lot of our stuff on our Twitter. The handle is Webiverse, so I would like request anybody to like just go through the timeline, and they could see. Basically, like at this point in time, we have physics-based everything. Like you can name vehicles, pets, variables, weapons, and it's all based on like standard like 3D file formats. And the beauty is that when it's open source, we build like one version of it, and then anybody can just go and like build 100 different versions of it, which is already happening. Like we haven't even started engaging very actively on the developer community side. Now we are focusing on it. That's why we are having these conversations as well. But it's already happening, right? Like people are already building cool experiences, and they're adding other things on top of it. Another thing which we have utilized, which we have realized, is like it's a game changer when you start building something on the web. Like everybody thinks of like when you start building on the web that, okay, you're constrained by WebGL, you're constrained by other performance. Fine, these are things which are real concern, but with like web GPU on the horizon, as well as WebAssembly, I think there's a huge push of like being able to run things in the browser at native speed. But the most important thing is that using anything on a web-based app, it is so easy to uh, do like external interfaces, right? Like when you're working with other APIs and all, it's just like much more easier to integrate, for example, your AI-based features, your text-to-speech, speech-to-text, all of these things become so much easier compared to when you're using it on any closed party software, because then you need an SDK, etc., to it. So we believe that like once we start with that, it's just about like all going back to the roots, right? Like 90s and 80s and 90s, it was all about the web, and that is like the web at the end of the day is the most democratic and the decentralized medium, right? Like we went the route of platforms for whatever reasons in 2000s, and the advantage of it is, I think, that with whenever you try to build anything on the web, getting standards to be approved is a bit difficult because you need at least like 3 or 4 major browser vendors to agree on it. Whereas when it's a closed party platform, you're the only decision maker, right? Like that's why it's so easy to, like, for example, WhatsApp was encrypted within 1 year of its launch, whereas like email is still unencrypted to this day. And that is one of the reasons why we felt that we want to just like show the way that, okay, you can work with these open standards, open protocols, and you can assemble something like this, so that at least it's a model for people. And then once people start adopting these things, and there's huge significant adoption and traction from everyone around, it just helps drive these conversations in these standard committees around standardization of formats, etc. So yeah, that's basically a quick intro about us. Happy to open the floor for any kind of specific Q&A, and we can take it from there.
Thank you. You have explained really completely, I guess. But I also have some questions for you, like how long have you been doing this?
So this is, Avier has been working on web-based technologies adjacently for the past 7 years. So as I said, right, like founding engineer Webflow, and then he's worked very extensively with the WebXR API as well. He's part of like W3C standard committees, etc., for that as well. So it is like 7 years in total, but it is not just like Avier's work. It is a lot of work which is done by the 3D web-based community as well, right? Like, for example, 3JS, and like other 3D web-based libraries such as Babylon, etc. But it all started coming together in the past 2 years when, at least the major breakthrough was, I think, when Avier made a full functioning avatar system. So, the avatar system is a first class system compared to, any other place you can get. It's a full body avatar system with hair physics, spring bones. And I think that was the first proof of concept that, okay, you can have a full high fidelity 3D based experience on the web. So I think for the past 2 years, we can say that like we've been laser focused on it, but the experimentation has been going on for the past 7 years.
Yeah, thank you. And also, I have another question for you is that, do you have any words for future developers, how to contribute or start building their own 3D experiences on the web?
Yeah, so I think it really depends if like depending upon the level of expertise anyone has and how much do they want to like go deep in the woods. But for example, if somebody wants to just create an experience, they can go and just read our user documentation, and you'll figure out that right now there are two ways to build an experience. So either you can drag and drop them in, or it's a simple like a 3JS JSON file template in which you can define your assets in like different places, and it all reads just like web-based URLs, right? Like web-based URLs for 3D files, and you can place them spatially, and your experience is there. Upcoming is that we will have a level editor, so like a 3D viewer, and then we'll also be able to like export anything out of like Unity, and maybe later on like Unreal as well. But Unity is what we are working on right now. So like whatever you create in Unity, you'll just be able to like export it out into Webiverse as well. But yeah, I would definitely encourage everyone to like just go on to the documentation and just check out. But that is for the most, like any kind of person who's interested to build it. If somebody wants to like contribute into the engine side of things, then we're also open for contributions, external contributions, as well as like if somebody wants to work with us as a team. I would say that like our readmes are not the best at this point in time. So it's best if like somebody like just comes in our Discord and hits us up, and we can like talk to them. But at the end of the day, you can create an issue. Everything is on GitHub. You can create a pull request if you want any extra features or anything else to be added as well.
Okay, great. That sounds really cool, actually. So you said that just that Webiverse shares its code, source code openly, but is it wise to share your code openly before even launching the product? So what are your thoughts about that?
So I think it's about it's a school of thought, right? Like we believe in the school of thought of like abundance, and I think at the end of the day, it creates a lot of goodwill, as well as when we started this off, it was such a far-fetched idea. Like when you would like tell somebody that okay, you will build a game on the web which is going to work in VR as well as AR, and it's going to be open world based game, anything which you basically play natively or on a console or on desktop. I think at that point in time, it was such a far-fetched idea that it was like having it open source was not a disadvantage. In fact, it was just more like a proof that okay, it exists, and like you can look under the hood that we are not basically running an export or on any other engine, right? It's natively on WebGL. And even to this day, I think we're at such a nascent stage. There's so much to be done that we would just want other people to like take inspiration from it, either build on top of it, contribute to it, or as well as come up with their different flavors and variations. I think the way we see it, it's going to be a huge uh, market, or like a huge paradigm shift, and we're just seeing like the start and the beginning of it. I think 3D spatial web, the opportunity is so huge that there at like when you're creating a category, you don't think about competition, right? Like I think at this point in time, anybody who wants to come in and take it as an inspiration, it's good for the ecosystem.
Thank you. Actually, it's a very nice way of thought. It's a really ideal way. Thank you. And also, what have been the challenges of building the game engine to run entirely in the browser?
Oh, I think many challenges. The first challenge was just to be able to like convince people in the first place, right? Like when we used to talk about it, like even internally to within our team as well, there's such a skepticism, right? Like will you be able to like is it possible to like just even do that? So within internally as well, lots of self doubts. That is the first thing. Second thing is that it's definitely is more difficult to build an engine as well as an experience on top from ground up, right? Like when you're using any of the established engines, they have like decades of work, so you can utilize a lot of libraries, you can utilize a lot of like work done by other people. But what we realized is that once you actually create the framework and the foundations on the web, actually code sharing on the webs as well as JavaScript side of things is much more open. So it's very easy for you to like find any shader. It's very easy to like find, and there's so much open source stuff on the web. I think initially it was difficult to like just get the initial game engine side of things connected, but after that we do feel that there's a lot of advantage of building on the web in terms of the open culture of code sharing which already exists in the web community.
No, thank you. I know you talked about how easy it was to bring in your avatars or environments into Webiverse, but can you talk a bit more of are there any more restrictions on it? Can you bring in any kind of avatars or environments?
Yeah. So I think the way to so what we have done is the restriction is definitely going to be on the client side because it depends upon the computation, the CPU and the GPU load at the end of the day, right? But in terms of the avatar system, that's a brilliant thing about the avatar system, right? Like you can either using the same file format, you can have a full high fidelity humanoid avatar, or you could just bring in any other kind of avatar with this, and that's the beauty of open standards. um, in terms of environments as well, no restrictions as such, except obviously the restrictions which would be on the client side of as to like how much CPU and the GPU load can be handled. Other than that, at this point in time, uh, we use Three.js as the rendering engine, but we move a lot of our physics calculation to PhysX by NVIDIA, which we have compiled to WebAssembly. So we literally at this point are constrained primarily by WebGL, but as I said, like with WebGPU coming in and even with WebGL, we try to like optimize as much as possible to be able to use the right design patterns for WebGL as well. But yeah, I would say the only restriction right now would be WebGL. Other than that, no restrictions as such. There are some like browser-based restrictions which they are sometimes there. Like for example, sometimes browsers turn off hardware acceleration and all, but those are settings which can easily be modified by the user at their end.
Cool. I have one question from the audience. So Daniel is asking, how is the support for VRM files across the industry currently? Are there major companies already using it?
So we are not targeting companies to be using it. We are targeting like creators and communities, and we haven't like officially launched yet. So the the traction is great. Like we do have like lots of interest in us, but as I said, right, like it's like 80%, 90% there, and we are working on the final tooling layer because we are like our target is basically any person should be able to come in and build their experience, right? Build their own MMO of it. You can think of it as like the next evolution of Roblox. Yeah, I mean the target is not companies, but like creators. Are they building it? Yes, they're already building it. We have like around, I would say, it's sporadic, but I would say somewhere around like 40 to 70 people who have like built their own experiences on top of it. And that's other than our own team, right? Like we also build a lot of experience, and like if you go on our Twitter, you'll see like lots of stuff in there.
Thank you. And also, what are the advantages and disadvantages to building your own 3D experience and game on the web versus native and using existing engines?
I think I covered it, but the most disadvantaged part of was building the engine, right? Which is the hard work which we have done. After that, I think there are only advantages from the creator side, because it's super easy. It's just a URL. You just open the URL. So the accessibility aspect is also huge. Um, yeah, I think the disadvantage was that it just takes a lot of time on developing the engine side of things, which we have done.
Thank you. And also another question from your mystery. Um, He's saying, or she's saying, a great product. Is it possible to have a boilerplate for anyone who wants to fork to make their own lightweight metaverse?
Sorry, can you repeat again, please?
Yeah, sure. They're saying that is it possible to have a boilerplate for anyone who wants to fork to make their own lightweight metaverse?
I don't really know what he means by a boilerplate. But I think the best way to do it, like, yeah, you can fork it. It's MIT license, for sure. And if you want to build an experience, the way we want to do it is that we'll be building a lot of our own experiences, and we just want it to be kind of like setting the benchmark, right? So whatever we'll be building, like just have a look out at us, and a lot of these repos will be also open source. So like anybody can like look at these examples, and then they can start remixing it to create like more different varieties of it. But I think the whole idea of what we will be launching with is that boilerplate experience, that like anybody as a creator or a community would be able to like build their experience. And when I say an experience, it's not just like building like having the 3D environment and the avatars, but also interactions, right? Also like a quest system, also so that you are able to like program your AI NPCs, so that you can actually define a quest in a way, so that it is a meaningful game, and it is all done through like low code or drag and drop widgets, by anyone. So that's the category which we are targeting. But any developer who wants to like contribute on the deep engine side of things as well, that's also welcome.
Thank you for answering that. Also, I have one more question. I know you said this, but can you explain a bit more about, are you thinking about interoperability and X compatibility between 2D and 3D experiences too?
Yes, so this is something which we are currently in the works. Okay, so one of the things about like the way we have built it, so right now, you can have a full 3D immersive version, or you can have like a 2.5D version, something like World of Warcraft, and you can move between these worlds with your same avatar, which is your same identity as well as your same inventory. Right now, we have for the avatar. We have a version in which we take a full 360-degree render, and we take a 360-degree render sprite sheet based render, right? So something like, if anybody remembers Doom, like how you used to have your character in Doom, right? So the next step is to actually, take this render and use that sprite sheet to be able to like take you into a 2D based experience as well. And that is also, which is in the pipeline. It's not something which we have fully done yet, but yeah, we have the 2D based sprite. Now we just have to like, do a few more things, and then we'll have that as well.
All right. I'm guessing we have time for another question. So Super Tommy is asking, can you talk a bit about how the backend works for real-time multiplayer? I see the GitHub repository for the client tags WebRTC.
Yeah, we
I
actually
guess
use.
we're out of time. Yeah.
Yeah, I think so. Anyways, we use.
Okay.
We
Okay,
use
so
WebSocket over
okay.
RTC. So, something similar to like what like Google Meet or anyone uses for like WebRTC, but we use a bit different implementation, which is like WebSocket over RTC, and that just enables us to like open up like hundreds of connections over WebSockets. And then it's like we use a SFU, which is the architecture in which everything is transmitted to a central node, and then from there it is broadcasted. So that's what we use for the multiplayer system right now.
Thank you, Ahad. It was a great talk, and thank you for being here and answering all the questions. And I can't wait to try Webiverse. But Ahad is also kind enough to stick around in Discord channel, so you can ask your questions to him, and he'll answer in the Q&A channel. So thank you, Ahad. It was a great talk.